Hi, this is Jeff Klein, editor of RadioGraphics. And for this podcast, we're going to depart from our normal podcast where we discuss an article in the current issue of the journal. Today, I'm pleased to have with us Dr. Cooky Menias from the Department of Radiology at the Mayo Clinic in Phoenix, Arizona, and the editor-designate for RadioGraphics. Cooky, welcome to our RadioGraphics podcast.
Thank you, Jeff. It's a pleasure to be here.
So, Cooky, let's start by having you tell us a little bit about yourself. Where were you born and where did you grow up?
So I was born in Egypt, in a very small city in Upper Egypt, which they call Malawi. And I was delivered by my grandmother. And soon after I was born, we immigrated to England, where my father completed his second round of urology residency. He already had completed his urology residency in Cairo. And we were by ourselves as a family in England, where my mom was actually only 18 with 2 children, and my dad was always on call. So my father then decided to join his brother, who was living in the States and in Milwaukee, of all places, with his family to bring some semblance to, a family together. So then he was asked to repeat his urology residency for the 3rd time, which he was not going to do that again, and decided to join anesthesiology. So at that time, it was only 2 years of residency for anesthesiology. And so we lived in Milwaukee, where he did his residency at Medical College of Wisconsin. Ironically, the medical school that's associated to my university where I went to Marquette. And then after his residency, he found a job in Chicago, and we moved there as a family, and where my family still lives right now.
Great, thanks. So how about your training and the faculty positions that you have held during your career?
As I mentioned, I went to Marquette University, where I majored in both French and biology, doing a semester abroad in France. I spent some time after graduating from Marquette in Kenya, where I volunteered at our Coptic Orthodox Center in Kenya, teaching Sunday school to Kenyans and working at the tuberculosis clinic at the University of Nairobi, which was just a few blocks from the center. And so I spent several weeks in different cities in Kenya doing, mobile clinic work. And that was a really critical time for me, as I decided then that I was going to find a cure for AIDS, as I kind of saw a lot of death in Kenya in 1990, and 100% of the prostitutes were HIV positive. So after that, I received my MD at George Washington University in Washington, D.C., and I very much enjoyed immunology, which was right on track for going to be that infectious disease specialist that I wanted to be. But I started the clinical rotations, and I was a little disenchanted with HIV and infectious disease, and perhaps I felt there would be no cure or vaccine. And so I decided quite late in my 4th year of medical school that I was not going to be an infectious disease specialist, and I did a rotation in radiology, where there were 2 key players in my decision to be a radiologist. Dr. Riyad Salem, who currently is a division head at Northwestern Interventional, who was actually the radiology resident who took me under his wing to tell me why I should be a radiologist, and Dr. Bill Olmsted, who is the second editor of RadioGraphics, who also took me under his wing and took time to mentor me through the application process and interview scheduled radiology. So I was convinced at that point that I wanted to be a radiologist. And so he advised me to rank Mallinckrodt Institute of Radiology as my first choice. And to be honest, that was the best decision for me. It's where I did my residency and fellowship, and it was really the best place I could honestly want to train. And I feel so lucky and privileged that I trained under the giants of radiology at that time. But before, finishing during my 4th year of residency, my father was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, a real ugly disease that we all know, and we diagnose daily at WashU. And remember, he was my first role model, and so life came full circle. And I have to say, it's quite different, a different perspective to be on the other side of medicine as a patient. And walking alongside from his diagnosis to treatment, I came full realization that real patients and real stories are behind every film. And I'm really privileged to be part of the care, and I need to offer the best care I could. So that's a basic teaching and philosophy I try to convey to my trainees, that behind every film there's a real patient, and we should never lose sight of that. And as I have this busy clinical practice in oncology at Mayo Clinic, it's a constant thought I have to keep in my mind. So I had a ridiculous supportive abdominal section at Mallinckrodt, and an even more supportive vice chair, Dr. Pikus, and chair, Dr. Yost, all who supported my career throughout the years. And so I'm quite loyal to Mallinckrodt, as they really made me who I am, and they really taught me the importance of patient-centered care. And I stayed at Mallinckrodt, reaching full professor and serving co-director of CT and ER, and shared the assistant program director with residency with Sanjeev Bala, who is a dear friend of mine and colleague, until 2013, where I left for a Mayo Clinic after being recruited by one of my good friends, and actually my first fellow in abdominal radiology, Dr. Amy Hara, who, again, full circle, is now my chair. And this goes to say how I believe the saying, what you give comes back. I mean, who would have thought that my trainee would soon be my boss? And so remember, for all of us, it's a good thought to, treat all as you would like to be treated, and always put the needs of the patients first, and life will just fall in place. And who knows, that person can be your boss later on. So I've now been at Mayo Clinic for 7 years now, and I again feel so lucky to be working with a fantastic abdominal radiology section and team, where I continue to work with colleagues who actually have the same clinical mindset of patient-centered care, and obviously have a very supportive chair. And that's where I'm at right now.
That's great. Thanks. Thanks for that. So maybe you could tell us how you first became involved with the RSNA, and in particular with RadioGraphics. You've been incredibly prolific with publishing articles in the journal. How did you get started? Who did you look to for advice on submitting education exhibits to the RSNA?
Well, it was very easy. Remember, my family living in Chicago made it easy for me to go to RSNA every year, and so Mallinckrodt was in St. Louis, so I made it a point to be at RSNA on Sunday, even though I wasn't off on Monday. At least I was at RSNA on Sunday since my first year of residency, and I never missed a year at RSNA. And again, remember, my first mentor is Dr. Olmsted, who happened to conveniently be the editor at the time of RadioGraphics. And so it was really an eye-opening experience as a early trainee coming to RSNA. I mean, it is the place. It is the educational powerhouse. And so I started very early collecting cases, and I, became a case hog, as if you will, and my trainees would know it, cases from the cookie jar, essentially, because I, collected a lot of cases. And at that time, if you remember, there were films, and I was there with a camera taking, pictures of the films and making into slides. I mean, it wasn't the JPEG download easiness that we were able. So I was very dedicated in taking and making my case collection. And so I got very involved with educational exhibits. And, to be honest, my most, loyal friend and most, important mentor was actually my co-resident, Sanjeev Bala. And Sanjeev and I did, exhibits together from day one, from, ER to, our own perspective sections. And so as the years passed, I don't know, I became the poster child of RSNA, and I don't mean it to be a pun, but it really is a pun. And because I submitted more than, I don't know, the numbers will say something like 450 exhibits or something like that. And, it was a different perspective at that time, and it continues to now. It is a great educational workforce, but how should I say it nicely? It wasn't that important from the academic point of view. As I've been told you can't be promoted by RSNA posters, and so. Unfortunately, that was my space, and I became the educator. And formatting exhibits was my, the place where I was able to be very creative. And so, at the time, was very supported again by my vice chair and my chair. And so, I was able to be promoted from an educational forefront as opposed to be that scientist. So, somewhere in mid 2000s, 2006, I started lecturing at RSNA. And I have lectured every year since. Been very lucky to be asked to continue to lecture at RSNA. And again, going back to that cookie jar, many of my trainees who have continued and now are practicing and are now section heads and big people in their own academic centers continue to send me cases to donate to the cookie jar. So it's a force that continues to this day.
That's terrific. So what was it about the journal in particular that motivated you to apply for the editorship? You've mentioned that Bill Olmsted obviously was a role model and mentor, so obviously that was perhaps your first introduction, but why apply for the editorship as you did a couple of years ago?
Well, to be, honest and full disclosure, the position came a few years too early for me. I would have liked a few more years to do full-time clinical work, which is my first passion. To strive to be that best clinician. But my other passions are to educate, mentor, inspire, in radiology. And what else than to be that face for our radiology specialty journal and educational journal. But it was kind of a now or never moment at that time when that spot became available. And so, the last two giants of the editors, basically spanned my entire radiology career. So I felt if I didn't do it now, I may lose this opportunity.
Well, great. So maybe you could share some of your plans for the journal going forward, perhaps short and some long-term goals.
Well, it's really hard to consider how one can improve the top educational journal as it stands. And to be honest, and I say this, there is a little bit of an imposter syndrome, how I can improve it. And I hope I don't mess up this great journal.
Just for the record, that's exactly what I said when I became the editor. Just want you to know.
Excellent. So at least we have this, it's really hard to feel that you can, improve something that's already a giant in the space. And it's a testament to your hard work and your vision that RadioGraphics is what it is today. So I think my main vision is to expand on what you've already established and to grow with your vision to, continue to be that highest educational source for many of us with the highest quality content and diverse and international engagement and work on the digital innovation spectrum of it. So I hope to strengthen, grow, expand, innovate, all within the future of radiographics, and stay tuned for some change, basically, of what's happening. We'll keep it a surprise in terms of the short and long-term goals of the change that will happen, because it's a growth between me and the editorial board, the staff, on how we will work together to expand by enhancing digital platforms, maybe innovating the users, growing our editorial team, our authorship, our readership. But it'll be something that we will work in changing.
Sounds good. So now, how would you go about describing your particular leadership style?
I think my leadership style is one of strong team building, and an environment that I hope would be more collaborative and inclusive. I think the continued success of a journal is dependent on this close collaboration. Again, between the editorial board, the editor, and the RSNA staff, we really are a group effort, and it really is that effort between all that make it what it is. I hope to invest heavily on the developing this team, and I'm really passionate about this role. And I want the team to be passionate in their roles, and I think together we can expect and set high expectations of what we can accomplish. And I said this to you behind the scenes, and I'll say it out loud. It really is a role that you are a conductor of a symphony, and that every piece together makes a beautiful product. And I think that's how I am learning that this will continue as that leadership role.
That's absolutely true. So in closing, Cooky, what else would you like for our audience to know about you?
So yeah, I strongly believe in an open communication policy, and I'm very approachable and welcoming. So I hope and I look forward to hearing input from our readership and relying on the guidance of their needs. And I hope with all of you, we can help expand our responsibilities to make sure that we have the highest quality educational content for our readership.
Well, Cooky, thanks for taking the time to speak with us today and tell us a little bit about yourself and about your plans for RadioGraphics. I know I join our audience in wishing you only success as you begin your term as the editor of RadioGraphics in January of 2020.
Thanks, Jeff, and thanks for all the support that you've given me now, and I hope you continue to as I walk into this path. And again, it's it's big shoes to fill, and I feel honored to be in this position. Thank you.
Well, you'll do terrific. So thanks so much, and thanks to our audience for tuning in today.